What happens when one of Hollywood's most intense actors faces off against a morning show host who thinks he can outsmart him? You're about to see one of the most jaw-dropping interviews ever aired on live television. And what unfolds next? Well, it's not just awkward. It's explosive. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think really caused Tom Hardy to completely lose it on live television. There's Tom Hardy, sitting across from George Stephanopoulos on Good Morning America. The studio lights are bright, the audience is silent, and the air feels thick with tension before a single word is even spoken. Hardy's there to promote his new film, but from the way his jaw tightens, it's clear this conversation won't go as planned. He's dressed in his usual laid-back style, a simple black jacket, understated yet commanding, but there's a look in his eyes, that unmistakable Hardy intensity, that says he's not here for nonsense. Tom, thanks for joining us this morning. Stephanopoulos begins, his practiced TV smile perfectly in place. Your new film is getting amazing reviews, but I'd like to start with something else. Hardy shifts slightly, one eyebrow lifting. Sure, George. What's on your mind? His tone is calm, but there's a warning edge beneath it. Well, Stephanopoulos continues, there's been some controversy surrounding your comments about method acting and mental health. Some critics say you've been irresponsible in your approach. The moment the word irresponsible leaves George's mouth, Hardy's entire expression changes. His eyes sharpen like a blade. You can almost feel the temperature in the room drop. Irresponsible, Hardy repeats slowly, his voice calm but dangerously steady. That's an interesting word choice, George. Care to elaborate? Stephanopoulos leans forward, clearly thinking he's steering the interview. Several mental health advocates have criticized your recent interviews, saying your intense preparation methods might glamorize risky behavior. Hardy tilts his head slightly, his Birmingham accent becoming more distinct. And you agree with them? I'm asking the questions here, Tom, Stephanopoulos replies, his tone tightening. What would you say to parents worried about young actors following your example? There's a long, uncomfortable pause. Hardy doesn't flinch. He just stares at Stephanopoulos, the silence stretching until even the audience seems afraid to breathe. Parents should be concerned, Hardy finally says, his voice low but cutting, about morning show hosts who do zero research before ambushing their guests with loaded questions based on second-hand gossip. You can see George's smile flicker, his composure slipping just slightly. Tom, I don't think that's fair. We're just trying to have an honest conversation. Honest? Hardy lets out a short, humorless laugh. George, if you wanted an honest conversation, you would have told my publicist about this line of questioning. You would have done your homework instead of reading talking points off a teleprompter. But that's not what this is it? George tries to keep his voice steady. I think our viewers deserve to hear your response to these legitimate concerns. Hardy leans forward slightly. Your viewers deserve better than this tabloid garbage masquerading as journalism. The tension in the studio could slice glass. Hardy's voice is calm, but his words hit with the precision of a knockout punch. Tell me, George, Hardy continues, when was the last time you actually researched method acting? When did you talk to mental health professionals about the therapeutic value of exploring dark emotions in a controlled setting? Stephanopoulos swallows hard but presses on. Tom, I think you're being defensive. Defensive? Hardy repeats, and now there's disbelief in his tone. George, I came here at 5 a.m. to talk about a film I poured my heart into. Instead, you're trying to create a gotcha moment based on quotes you've ripped out of context. That's not defensive. That's called having standards. George tries to regain control. Well, the quotes speak for themselves. Do they? Hardy asks sharply. Because I'd love to hear which specific quotes you're referring to. Can you cite them, word for word? There's a long silence. Stephanopoulos glances down at his papers, clearly stalling. Well, he says, fumbling, there have been several interviews where you discussed your intense preparation methods. Several interviews, Hardy interrupts, leaning back. But you can't name a single one, can you? No publication, no journalist, no exact words. Just vague accusations. Tom, I think we're getting off track here, George says quickly. No, George, Hardy fires back. We're finally on track. You accused me of being irresponsible, of influencing young actors in dangerous ways, and now you can't even back it up. That's not journalism, mate. That's character assassination built on hearsay. You can practically see the color draining from Stephanopoulos' face as Hardy dismantles him, piece by piece. I have the information right here, George says, fumbling with his notes. Then read it, Hardy challenges. George looks down again, flipping through papers. The specific quote isn't as important as the overall pattern of statements. Hardy's tone sharpens instantly. The specific quote isn't important? His voice rises just enough to make everyone freeze. George, you just accused me on national television of being a danger to young actors. And now you're saying the actual words don't matter? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Hardy cuts in, his tone suddenly quiet, almost eerily calm. Because it sounds like you ambushed me with accusations you can't even properly articulate. The air in the studio turns heavy. Even the crew looks unsure whether to keep rolling or cut to commercial. Tom, let's talk about your new film, Stephanopoulos says finally, voice shaking slightly. No, George, Hardy says flatly. We're not done here. You started this. You accused me of something serious. You owe your audience an explanation. I think we should move on, George mutters. I think you should answer the question, Hardy says, his gaze locked in. You brought up mental health advocates who supposedly criticized me. Name one. Just one. George looks trapped. Tom, there have been several articles. Several articles, but no names, no quotes, no facts, Hardy says, his tone like ice. You realize you're doing exactly what you're accusing me of? You're spreading vague, unsubstantiated claims. That's not the same thing, George insists weakly. Isn't it? Hardy fires back. You just told millions of people that mental health advocates think I'm dangerous, and you can't prove it. That's not journalism, George. That's gossip in a suit and tie. The studio is silent. George's professional mask is cracking. Crew members exchange nervous glances behind the cameras. We have producers who research these topics, Stephanopoulos tries to say. Your producers, Hardy repeats, almost pitying him now. Tell me, George, how long have you been in journalism? That's not relevant. I think it's very relevant, Hardy replies smoothly. Because what you're doing right now isn't journalism. It's performance. It's lazy reporting dressed up as integrity. Stephanopoulos' face is turning red. Tom, I don't appreciate your tone. And I don't appreciate being ambushed with false accusations on live TV, Hardy shoots back. But here we are. Hardy leans forward again, his voice lower now, almost dangerous in its calm. You invited me here to talk about my work, and instead, you're trying to make a spectacle out of me. You call this journalism? Stephanopoulos swallows hard, trying to recover. We're just trying to have a conversation, Tom. Hardy tilts his head, his eyes locked on George. No, you're trying to have a moment. There's a difference. You want that viral clip. You want outrage. But you didn't come here with facts, just gossip. The studio audience sits in uneasy silence, eyes darting between the two men. You can feel the energy shift. What started as a routine interview has turned into a slow-motion car crash no one can look away from. Tom, Stephanopoulos says carefully, I think you're reading too much into this. Our intention was never to attack you. Then what do you call this? Hardy gestures slightly toward the stack of papers in George's hands. You came at me with accusations. You used words like irresponsible, and you can't even name a source. That's not misunderstanding, George. That's deliberate. Stephanopoulos tries to smile again, but it looks forced. I think you're being overly sensitive. Hardy raises an eyebrow, almost amused. Overly sensitive? George, you question my mental health practices on live television. You implied I'm a danger to young actors, and now you're calling me sensitive for asking for proof? The audience gasps softly, sensing the hostility in Hardy's tone. Look, Stephanopoulos starts. We're just doing our job. Hardy cuts in immediately. Doing your job would mean coming prepared. Doing your job would mean understanding your guest and their work. What you're doing right now isn't your job, it's spectacle. George takes a breath, clearly trying to regain control. Tom, I think we're just misunderstanding each other. There's no misunderstanding here, Hardy says coldly. You accuse me of something serious. Either back it up or take it back. For a moment, the only sound in the studio is the soft hum of the cameras. Even the crew has stopped moving. Tom, I think it would be better if we talked about your film, George says finally, voice tight. No, Hardy replies sharply. You don't get to accuse me and then hide behind the movie promo when it gets uncomfortable. That's not how this works. The tension is so thick now that even the camera operators hesitate. Every word feels like a ticking bomb. George, Hardy continues, his tone quieter but far more dangerous. You're sitting here, telling millions of people that I might be a bad influence. And you can't name a single expert, a single critic, a single person who said that. That's not journalism. That's reckless. Stephanopoulos clears his throat. We're raising questions that people are asking. Who? Hardy demands. Who's asking? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you are the only one making these claims. George shifts uncomfortably, his polished media training starting to fail him. Tom, I think you're taking this too personally. I should take it personally, Hardy says firmly. You made it personal when you questioned my integrity. The crowd is completely frozen now. The tension feels electric, like everyone's waiting for someone to call cut, but no one dares move. Let's not turn this into an argument, George says weakly, forcing another smile. Hardy's eyes narrow. Too late for that, mate. There's a long pause. George tries to change the subject again. Your new movie explores some dark emotional territory. But Hardy doesn't let him. You don't get to pivot, George. Not after what you just pulled. You made accusations without evidence. Now you're trying to bury it under small talk. I'm not trying to bury anything, George says, frustration creeping into his voice. Then prove it, Hardy says, his tone sharp. Show me the research. Quote one person who said what you just claimed. Just one. George fumbles with his papers again, flipping pages, searching desperately for something that isn't there. Our producers compiled, Hardy interrupts immediately. Your producers. Right. So let me get this straight. You didn't even read the full context of what you're accusing me of. You're relying on notes from someone else. That's what this is? Stephanopoulos looks toward the camera, clearly flustered. Tom, I think we're going in circles here. We're not going in circles, Hardy fires back. We're getting to the truth. And the truth is, you came here unprepared. George's voice is shaking now, barely holding its usual smoothness. That's not fair. It's perfectly fair, Hardy says, leaning forward again, because you started this. You set the tone the moment you said irresponsible. Stephanopoulos tries to take a breath, but his hands are visibly trembling as he adjusts his papers. Tom, I don't want this to turn into hostility. Then maybe, Hardy says, his voice dropping to a low growl, you shouldn't have attacked me on live television. George opens his mouth to respond, but no words come out. The silence in the room is suffocating. Finally, he manages to say, we're just doing our job. Then do it properly, Hardy snaps. Because right now, you're doing damage, not journalism. The studio audience remains silent. Even the smallest sound, a cough, a chair squeak, would feel out of place. Tom, We didn't mean for this to come across as an attack, George says quietly. It doesn't matter what you meant, Hardy replies. It matters what you did. And what you did was accuse me of being reckless, without a single shred of proof. George's shoulders slump slightly. You can see the exhaustion on his face, the fight leaving him. Maybe we should just move on, he mutters. Hardy shakes his head slowly. No, George. You don't get to move on from this. You owe it to your audience to admit when you're wrong. George looks off camera, clearly signaling for help from his producers, but no one steps in. No one knows how to fix this disaster unfolding live. Hardy continues, his tone controlled but scathing. You invited me here to discuss my work, and instead you tried to paint me as unstable. You didn't come here with questions. You came here with accusations. George tries to speak, but Hardy keeps going. You didn't even bother to verify your information. You built this entire ambush on rumors. That's not journalism. That's manipulation. Stephanopoulos' face is red now, his confidence slipping completely. Tom, I think you're being aggressive. I'm being honest, Hardy counters. There's a difference. You threw accusations at me and expected me to just smile and play along. That's not happening. The studio is still dead silent. The energy is tense, raw, and entirely unpredictable. George finally says, Tom, I think we've spent enough time on this. Hardy's eyes flash. Oh, now you want to stop? After you tried to drag my name through the mud? Convenient. He leans back slightly, his voice steady but cutting. You wanted a viral moment, George? Congratulations. You've got one.